So close. I mean, don't get me wrong, the HTC U11 Plus is still easily one of the best phones of 2017, but it could have been the best currently available flagship if, in my opinion, they wouldn't have dropped the ball in at least one crucial category. Which one that is, I'm gonna tell you later on, but for now, let's check the design and build quality and compare the size with the OnePlus 5T, and you will see that even though they have the same display size, it is taller in terms of width, pretty much the same, but also thicker due to the bigger battery. If that relates to better battery life, we will see later on, but for now, let's take a look at the design, and I have to say, with the curves here to the sides and the great grippy sides, it feels great in hand, very premium, especially due to nothing creaking at all. Amazing tactile feedback of the buttons, great placement, and it just feels great. But as you can also see, the see-through back, which is kind of like a glass, is not all that rugged because I took really well care of this phone and it got a few scratches. So this is something to be kept in mind. Of course, the sides do kind of push in because of the squeeze functionality, but it is great. Of course, due to being quite compact in terms of especially width, one-hand usability isn't that bad if you don't care about not being able to reach the top, at least if you have shorter fingers due to the 2:1 aspect ratio. The fingerprint reader, I would say, is solid. It's not the very fastest one just because in terms of screen turn-on time, but it reacted very well and it's positioned quite natural, so I gotta give it to that. Of course, we can see here the LEDs and the camera, which is pretty much absolutely flush. Then we will see the microphone, SD card and SIM card tray, nothing on the left. And on the bottom we can see USB Type-C, microphone and the speaker that also works together with the earpiece for the dual speaker arrangement. You can see the front facing cam, notification LED is there, and no capacitive button since we obviously now have on-screen ones, flat front. Nice transition, everything feels very nicely smoothed off, so great in and feel, great design. But what about the actual display? In here I have to say I am, at least on a high-end level, a little bit disappointed, because once I actually find the settings, which always are a little bit weird on HTC displays, I have to say we have nice options. We can select between DCI P3 and sRGB. I would just leave it like that. You can also change the color temperature. But there is just something a little bit wrong with this display, because don't get me wrong, blacks are amongst the very best ones for a non-AMOLED display. Very nice dark, and colors usually are very great, but the thing is, maximum brightness I just measured 317 lux, so it's definitely not of the brightest ones. It's great and sharp due to the QHD display, but my main issue actually is that this phone does what usually not a lot of phones do, like sometimes Huawei phones. But there is something going on in terms of contrast and brightness, and I'm not sure if it's app dependent or actually brightness dependent, because this has nothing to do with auto brightness. This is already max on manual settings, but sometimes the contrast just gets a little bit faded out. It looks like there is a layer of gray beneath it, and white just don't look as nice as they should anymore. That's the thing, and therefore it just doesn't quite pop always as it could be, and that's holding it back along with the brightness. So these two things just prevent me from giving it a flagship level display rating, and just 4.5 stars. The brightness and especially this little bit of grayish tint that it gets, just because it's never staying that way, because in some situations as right now it's quite bright and vivid, and then in another situation it gets dim and a little bit dull. It is quite a bummer in my opinion. But what about the speakers? Okay, the good things, dual speaker, that's great. You won't pretty much get front-facing stereo these days, not all that often. And it is very loud, but I also have to say, it sounds a little bit flat. I would wait for a little bit more of a richer sound. Yes, you have the two different kind of presets for the sound, but the default one is already the best one, so I would wish for it to be a little bit richer. That's the only thing that prevents me from giving it more, and especially since you have these high volumes, on those it actually gets a little bit harsh, a little bit piercing to the ears. Now, headphone jack, which is not available, you need the dongle for that, is actually really good though. Very loud, a little bit on the muffled side, but if you have an equalizer to set it up, you will get a really good experience. Now, good experience, what do I have to say about that in terms of performance? This, and to keep this short, is an absolute flagship device. It feels very lightweight, very fluid. We have very nice, fast startup times, as you can see. Apps launch very quickly, and everything feels superbly smooth. Of course, the browser as well, multitasking and all that is absolutely on a killer level. That's why I won't go any further into that. This is amongst the very best ones. It's just 5 stars, not 5 gold stars, because we are so close already to the upcoming flagships. Now, battery life, a full charge takes 1 hour and 35. At about 30 minutes, you are at 49% from 5%, which is a very good value, no problems here. Battery life. HTC, at least from my experience, is known for one thing, giving you very good battery life on mobile data, but for some reason not much more on Wi-Fi. And that is the same case here, because on mobile data I got around 6 to 6.5 hours, so something in between, which is a very good result, especially for a flagship. But on Wi-Fi I got maybe like half an hour, maybe at best an hour more, where other phones get like 2-3 hours more. So I'm not quite sure what's that about, because the standby range is ranging from good to very good, so that can't be it. So still, despite that, I'm super pleased. Even though, yeah, the battery size, yeah, got me thinking I would get even more. Now, about the software, I have to say I really love the software. I mean, the squeeze feature is something actually really nice. And I'm not gonna go too much into that, but what you can actually do is, if you set it up, if you go into it, you can actually set some special settings. And this is something you won't really get anywhere else, because for some reason I did not change the language. So let's just do that. And if you go into the Edge feature, you will see that you have these kind of customized. So you could go into any app, hit the button, and then you can let it do what it should do. So I'm just really quickly gonna do that on the YouTube app. Okay, so here you can see, for example, if I do the short trigger now, it presses this. And for example, if I want to now do the same, I just do it once again. It goes to clear on it. Now I do the long press, and it presses the button here, and they are deleted. So you can set up your own edge gestures. This is so handy, especially in many apps. You can, of course, adjust the settings and so on. But as you can see, we have an app drawer, we have quick settings, and it looks very nice, quite stockish, at least in terms of feel. But we have a theming engine, and a very nice one to that. We already have the latest and greatest software. Once I can actually show this, as you can see here, software 8.0. Okay, it's not 8.1, but still fine enough. And there are a lot of nice features. I have to say just that we have fingerprint scanner, personalized battery, app notifications. It looks a little bit different, and I'm still a little bit something that I have to get used to in terms of settings, because they are a little bit placed somewhere else. But I really like the UI. Absolutely. And we just saw that the HTC 10 even got an Oreo update, so update support should be very good. It's usually quite fast, so I have to say this is one of my most favorite softwares of them all. Now, about the camera software, let's check that. And I also like that one because you have easy access to the most important parts, because if you go, for example, here, you can toggle HDR auto and so on. Here we have quick access to the main settings, video also as well. There is a limit on 4K, which is a little bit of a bummer. It's, I think, 7 minutes or 6 minutes, something like that. No, yeah, but therefore you have 1080p 60. But let's actually check the qualities, and why does this keep happening? It should not. So, okay, here's the camera. Front facer from this distance, a little bit soft, but where the normal distance would be, you are in the sweet spot, and then everything looks sharp. Great colors, great saturation and balance. Absolutely a top front-facing shooter. The only thing that prevents me giving it a higher rating would be something like a bokeh mode or more features, but pictures just on their own look amazing, especially since you also have auto HDR on the front cam. Inside it looks great, absolutely top. I almost had no miss shots, and it just looks absolutely brilliant. Sometimes maybe a little bit over or underexposed, but in most situations great. Low light is also solid, I would say, because it doesn't look too grainy. With the flash, of course, it looks better. But yeah, also pleased with that here. A little bit less noise would have been fine, but pictures turn out absolutely okay. I definitely think they improved on the kind of exposure that I had a little bit of an issue on the HTC U11. Outside, still didn't have the best weather, but still got great shots. Especially, I have to point out, the autofocus is absolutely top-notch. Where most cameras fail, this one got it just right. And that was also, I think I complained about the HTC U11, so big improvement here. Exposure seems way better, even though on some pictures, like here, for example, it's way too dark, and even HDR didn't help much. So that is a little bit of a weird thing. Of course, weather dependent, but a little bit odd to see. But here, these pictures, absolutely great focus. absolutely shutter times. And yeah, tap to focus worked, absolutely reliable. Great pictures, very sharp. Natural though, colors don't seem off in most situations. I'm absolutely not just pleased, I'm actually impressed. Now let's check the video. And here we can see 4K. The only issue that I have with the video is that we at first have a little bit of stuttering, but it's fine. But it's, as you can see here, on movement and on a lot of kind of one colored sides, a little bit too much artifacts going on. That's the one thing. It just doesn't feel quite smooth as it should be. Stabilization, yeah, is fine. Not really that much going on. It feels quite natural, but it just doesn't feel very smooth for some reason. But the picture quality is top notch. And even on video, as you can see here, this is absolutely killer when it comes to the autofocus and such a reliable quality. But I would actually maybe even go, that was the wrong one, for 1080p 60 because it feels smoother. It doesn't really lose much sharpness. The autofocus is not quite as smooth and subtle, but it is so reliable. The video looks still great, as you can see here. And just to get to the autofocus, you have to see that here. This is a very hard to get object, and it did get it right. As you can see, I'm going away, and once again, and it is in focus. So great job. Without the artifacts, I would have been even more so happy. So front-facing cam, also nice and sharp. Not quite as good as of course as the front cam. Also the artifacting going on. Besides that though, an absolutely top-notch front-facing video cam. The same goes for inside. Here I have to say though that that's where I do my audio test. The audio was super nice. Clean, rich, great volume, super nicely done. So that is pretty much already it. So let's get into the rating, my final conclusion. And I have to cover a few things, the ratings. Two things. First of all, the display didn't get more than 4.5 just because of the brightness and the weird kind of auto brightness shifts and so on. The speaker didn't get a higher rating, even though it's very loud and kind of stereo, but it sounded a little bit piercing. That was a little bit of a warmer touch would have been nicer. Anything else got the rating that it got. And I have to say, for me, just if the display wouldn't have been on a real flagship level, because it's sharp and it's great and everything else, but it's not always that, because sometimes the contrast seems so off, the colors seem so kind of washed out and faded, and then in another situation, without any real reason, it seems great. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but this kind of prevented me from giving it the most complete phone of 2017, because the camera is on a top-notch level, maybe not perfect, especially in terms of video, but the battery life is super solid for a flagship. It is not too big, it's still portable, it feels great. We have the amazing software with the edge gestures and all that. So as you can see, everything is super strong, and the ratings just show that as well. And for the price of $750, it's still kind of where all other flagships are. Of course, price will drop quite soon. But like I said, one of the best phones that could have been the best phone. In my opinion, it didn't quite get to that. If you check maybe the screen somewhere else and you are fine with it, or maybe even super pleased with it, then you get an absolutely killer phone. But if they would have just kept the screen quality of the HTC U11, I think that would have been it. Doesn't really break it or make it to me. Actually for me, the display for a flagship for this price, which is super important for me, is I don't like if something is changing with the display, is a little bit of a deal breaker. But that's the only thing. Everything else I've seen is super strong, and that's just where I'm gonna leave it. I hope you liked the review. Until next time.